Well, here we go. First Wednesday of January 2023.
It's here. It's here. Happy New Year, everybody.
So, how was your New Year's weekend?
They came in with a blast. Fireworks, concert, the mayor of Atlanta can't ask for a better bring in for the new year.
Well, we've got a couple of things that we were going to touch on real quick. First off, not cannabis business, but still important. There is some news that has come out this morning on Damar Hamlin, which of course we've all heard, but he is improving.
It's
He's
great.
still considered critical, but he is better than the original results. So I wanted to press that. That is good.
And that is great news. That was a polarizing situation. It put tears in my eyes as well. To just let you know, man, what I've been talking about love, just loving your fellow brother and fellow sister in this world. You know, it's a lot of hurt, a lot of pain in this world. But when you see something like that, I mean, it can happen to anybody at any time.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well,
And
it's
he
one
was
of those
doing something
things
right.
that the beauty out of horror, we've seen a lot of people show out support, show the humanity that we should be as people, which
Absolutely.
has been a nice little touch for the beginning of the year.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, the circumstance, but nice to see that people are, reaching out, showing the humanitarian that we should show and caring about other people.
Absolutely. He had um, a toy drive that he started back in his final years of college,
Hmm.
and people have gave a tremendous amount of support to that toy drive, which is something that's great. Just it just shows what type of person he was, what type of heart he had, and people in their own ways can appreciate a good person like that, so they're supporting, and that's great. It's great to see.
Absolutely. And on a second update from the story we talked about last week, the individual in Kansas who was cited for having cannabis THC in the hospital room with a vape, even though they said there was no oxygen, the police have dropped that. They received many, many upset people in the town, in the community. It was while their office was closed, but they have essentially dropped it 8 days later. And they got a lot of backlash. Nothing that caused actual, harm or disrest, but a lot of people reached out to the police department and showed their dishappiness with what they were doing.
I agree too. The most important thing that man is in his final walks and stages, breaths in this world, and to subject him to any form of distress, duress, discomfort, is like wow. Um,
Yep.
and that's why the provider in the hospital, and I'm certain that she's going to be getting the same level of black backlash. It's just not spoken right now, but I'm certain that it is.
Right. Well, the chief police has actually come out and has started a communication in terms of the medical marijuana there, and has stated we shouldn't have laws on the books that we don't want to enforce. And if we want us to be compassionate, we want us to help people, we have to address this issue in the same fashion.
Well, I think that's a moral issue. And I think the chief of police made a moral decision because you still have to look at the circumstances. I mean, I'm going to haul this man out of the hospital who's in the last days of his life. Um, and just say, God forbid, that something happens in court while he's in court. I mean, and it happens on your watch. So certain things you can say, you know what, I'm not gonna go there, and I'm glad he didn't.
Well, at the same point, the son came out and said the man cannot stand up on his own. So they'd have to put him in a wheelchair, wheel him to the car, wheel him into the courtroom, wait possibly for his time to be seen. And what else does he need medical in there to even get through however long he has to be in court? It's just completely unhumane.
Inhumane, yeah, absolutely. And I think what would probably happen is he would probably be seen first just because of his physical
Right.
disabilities.
As he should.
Um, but even still, getting transported there, getting out, going through security, going to the courtroom, sitting, waiting for the judge to call him. Do we go in there with an attorney? Do we go in there without an attorney? Um, these are all the questions that, like, you really want to subject somebody who's at the end of the literally speaking, the end of their life. That is not how you want them to go out. And that's something that, like I said, a moral decision was made.
Right. And we know that he is terminal, but we're also, as we've seen here in Georgia during Christmas, it was very cold. We had a huge cold front come through most of the nation. So you want to get this man out of the hospital and now could potentially get pneumonia or something else as well. Yes, we know
Yeah,
he's terminal, but still, you're just making it worse for him,
I can tell
potentially.
you right now, COVID is definitely is around. It's around the corner for anybody. You don't know who you're coming in contact with, and you're subjecting them to unnecessary exposure as well. So
Yep.
that part, you know.
Yep. It's something else we want to do. We want to do some recap of last year, but we're going to do some potential, doesn't mean this is happening, but potential predictions for 2023, what could be coming, and kind of, thoughts of where we think it's going and the possibility of what these predictions might be. But first, we're going to go back to January for a minute. January, we begin with Montana began legal adult use. Now, remember, this is 2022, not today. They began adult use. The Democrat there, the representative, announced his retirement, and he was skeptical about the Safe Banking Act would pass before he left Congress. And as we know, nothing has happened there.
It stalled out last year, going right into the end of the year, and you know, still once again, Schedule One needs to be changed on the books in the Fed in order for it to take its next steps. Um, but there, a lot of states are not willing to challenge it,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a federal violation.
Yep. And then in February, we had Mississippi legalize the medical after many trials and tribulations. They wanted to pass the Safe Banking Act attached to the Cannabis Act. And again, they got a lot of data on the hemp, but again, no safe banking. So unfortunately, we know that was something that happened for 12 months, and we're still in that. And Congress just started yesterday, by the way, for those who aren't aware. We're in the, what is it, 118th? Is that what I said it was? I forgot now. But as you saw, we don't even have a speaker yet. So we're still in limbo on that before we go any further. So this is going to be an up and down for a little while.
Yeah, we're at the beginning of the year, and some of the agendas will hit probably within the next week as
Right.
they go back to open sessions. We are wrapping up the tail end of the holidays. We're still fresh into the new year, so this week is more of a planning and getting the agendas together. But we should see some conversations starting in the next 2 weeks.
Correct. And now we go to March, which brought the end of speculation that Delaware might legalize. New taxes required, a supermajority to pass at the time the dooming bill, and the DC continued to deal with the ban on cannabis sales. But Delaware still trying to get that legalized, still moving forward. That was the highlight of March.
Well, we talked about where Delaware was that state that decided to prosecute people passing through, coming from
Mm-hmm.
state of Pennsylvania, state of New York, and you just find yourself in that precarious position where if you get stopped, you're going to jail. Um, Thankfully, um, for people who have been affected, and then for the legislation there decided to legalize. Um, the question is, when will it happen? By putting the tax in place, the tax will help regulate the industry there. It will give it all the support it needs to thrive and exist in that market. So I'm happy to at least see it's going in that direction.
Absolutely, because in April we saw Maryland legislators vote to put adult use legalization on this past November ballot, and the sales began in New Jersey. Of course, many ups and downs, but they are now pushing forward. So April is when we really, really started seeing a lot of progress moving forward.
Absolutely. And big shout outs to Maryland, as it's pushing that number up to that midway point. We're looking at getting 25, 26, 27 states. So that way, now that we have the majority of the states legalized for adult use or for recreational use, hey, we're going in the direction that we need for the support in the industry.
Yep, that brought us to May, which is a merry month because Rhode Island joined its New England neighbors in legalizing adult use cannabis, and Indiana State Senate added up their campaign ad as well for it.
Now, that's good to hear. As I said, the states are coming online. Um, Indiana's there. Illinois is there. Um, I'm sorry, not Illinois. Michigan is there. Of course, Rhode Island, Jersey, New York, Maryland, D.C., Maine, New Hampshire. Connecticut's not online yet, but they're pressing. So I mean, in that New England state, there's a lot that's going on.
No, absolutely. Now, there is a lot because in June, Maryland lawmakers decided to jumpstart regulating the cannabis business, assuming that the ballot would pass this past November.
Gotcha. We just got Jelani just came in. Jelani, can you hear?
Hey Sam, how you doing, man?
Good, good. Jelani, good to have you on. Got Nate on the line too.
Good morning.
Hey Nate, good morning, man. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. And yourself?
Absolutely remarkable, man. No complaints.
Well, we are doing a quick little recap of some of the big things month by month that happened last year. We're currently in July, so we're going to go through this a little bit, get, of course, your thoughts in what we saw this past year. We're going to spend some time having you discuss yourself, what you bring to the table in terms of the cannabis industry, so that our listeners can learn about you, what we can do. And then if we have time, we're going to do a couple of predictions that we saw that might be coming this year and get our thoughts of what may actually happen.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I was under the impression that I was listening today. I didn't know I was contributing. My apologies, Nate.
Oh, no, wonderful. No, we'd love to get your input because it's always great to hear a new voice, new ideas in the business, because this business is, as you know, immersive, and it takes all of us to come together. So we want to hear what Good Farms is all about.
And Jelani, just to add to that, conversation regarding the cannabis space, the hemp space, we have to normalize those conversations for it to go into law and to go into effect. As long as it's considered a taboo, people kind of being quiet and not saying nothing about it, the old mindsets will still prevail under those circumstances. So that way, we're not able to get the word out. We're not able to get votes. We're not able to push decisions being made in the Senate or in Congress or in the Fed to change the standards and the licensing rights, safe banking, the things that are necessary for this industry to thrive. We got to maintain conversation. The conversation has to be daily and weekly, and that's what we're doing on this podcast. I think
All
we
right.
lost him.
We lost them at least for a moment. So we'll go ahead and go to July, which brought self certification for all medical marijuana customers in DC. But the Congress won't let you have adult use sales yet. But at least they've moved forward with the medical. In August, Missouri ballot had it on there for the Cannabis Research Act, which was filled in Congress. So we got those two moving forward very well before we went to the fall with September. And we're still moving forward with this, but September brought the vote for cannabis consumption lounges in Las Vegas, 7 years after legalizing the medical out there, and Georgia issued license for medical, but as we know, it's still up and down, back and forth.
Yeah, and it's what Vegas is doing right now is they are pushing it. I mean, they're
Yes.
they're literally opening the industry up to look at them first and foremost of how they do it. Vegas itself, or the state of Nevada, has been um, a state that has said this is the way how we would like to run our state, and they've left it at that. We're going to run our state. Um, Anything that the Fed wants to do or needs to do, they'll consort with them and they'll deal with them, in a either in a gentleman's format or behind closed doors. And as of what we've seen thus far, it hasn't been a situation where the Fed has said, "Hey, you're totally out of line, and we're not supporting you."
Right. And I'll tell you, I would love to see more states jump on this and do it the kind of same way, set forth what their parameters, what they want to see done, let it happen on the state level. And then once we get enough states involved, then let's start looking at what can be done federally.
Absolutely. And I think Vegas is going to really blow the doors open this year because they're removing all of the restrictions on a state level. They're basically saying, "Hey, this is our state. We run our state, and we'll take advice from you, but we don't need it today." And that's really what Vegas is doing.
Well, it's one of those things wondering, and I didn't see it when we discussed it last week, but perhaps this is part of what Afrojack is looking at on his campaign for presidency. He's using the Vegas model, what he sees going on with them, how it happened, and that's what he's trying to build his platform with.
Yeah, yeah, and it's definitely. I'd love to see some of the gains and check out his campaign agenda for this year because he has to lay it out. Um,
Yeah.
it's about a year and some change away from the next commander in chief.
Yep. And now we're going to go to October when Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stent announced a special election that's going to be coming up soon, March 7th, to decide whether to bring the adult use cannabis to the Sooner State. The federal news was that Biden, as we discussed, granted pardons to those in federal prison for marijuana offenses, which, of course, we dug into what that really meant, how much of a possibility those things were, because, of course, federal is different than what he's talking about on these low end medicals.
Well, I think that the most important thing is the pardons to continue to push to release people who have been prosecuted for possession. And then and that on the flip side, turning around and giving those same people the opportunity to lead in the cannabis space because they were a part of the cannabis space when they had their infraction. So there's still a lot to do to create the equity across the board, but it definitely starts with the pardons.
Well, it does. And that bright side of all of that is that it began the federal review of the cannabis rescheduling. So that was the big part of the pardons because the pardons are still a work in progress, let's be honest.
Right.
But New York doing what they did in terms of, hey, we want to give those people who were involved first and foremost the chance to do stuff in this industry before anybody else is spectacular.
Right. And that's the most important thing is that New York has taken a very strong stance that they're moving forward. They're providing not only the equity, but they're providing all the other things that's necessary to allow other states to look at what they're doing, especially in the New England area. All other states in that area will get online.
Yeah, but then November was a very, very quiet month, wasn't it? But actually, no, it wasn't because they were 5 states with legal measures on the ballot.
So
What
we
went
got
on with that?
we got a listener here that said that Illinois did it first,
Yep.
but they failed to implement social equity. So definitely appreciate you providing that insight. The biggest thing is the advocacy. We'd love to know your viewpoints and definitely send out an instant message to us so that way we can integrate you into our call.
Yeah, absolutely. Because unfortunately, like they had stated, that it didn't quite happen. It was a failed attempt for the social equity and the social justice, but an attempt is at least that an attempt moving towards success. There's going to be some failures and setbacks, but we can't let those failures and setbacks stop the movement.
Right. So yes. So in Illinois, um, the government itself throttled legal supply, and here in the notes it says the price to soften in Illinois or government throttles legal supply will not meet demand. Um, can you shed some light on that, Nate?
Well, if I'm right, I think that was actually part of the predictions, correct? That we're about to get into.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I see that.
Yeah, that was going to be part of the predictions that I saw that they're stating that, which we'll get into in just a moment. We're going to finish up here with November because Maryland and Missouri voted yes. Arkansas and the Dakotas, of course, voted no. And we found out that people are licking toads in national parks. That I hadn't heard of, but I mean,
Yeah, the psychedelic market, it's opening up though, but not to that extent.
right.
Those toads can be lethal. So please don't lick them.
Well, and the listener brought up a fair point there that with the failures and setbacks, I think they were planned out on purpose. And, we don't know if they were or they were not, but we know that from what we've seen on the political end, sometimes it's set up for failure. It's set up because the proper things have not been done in terms of making everything is legal, everything is proper, that businesses are going to be protected, individuals, they're not always done what needs to be done in the pre-planning. It's just thrown out there and then it fails.
I think that still goes back to who the governor is and what their beliefs. If they are open to that change, if they're open to creating opportunity for the people in that city and that state, um, that they are uh, the chief and commander in chief of that state. It's just really important that they do what's in the best interest of that state. That's really important.
Right. And I've pulled up something real quick because our listener brought it forth. And this was starting January 1st of 2020. So it's been a while. Adults over 21 will be able to legally purchase cannabis for recreational use and licensed dispensaries across the state. Now, the possession limit, for example, for these residents, 30 grams of flower, 5 grams of concentrate, 500 milligrams of THC. People may possess more than 30 grams of cannabis if it's grown and secured in their residence under certain conditions.
And the conditions is really important because transporting it, getting it to your residence without being stopped, there's the gray area. So where does it start there?
Right. Because, for example, promoting equality, at least this is what they had in the plan. I'm not sure where it's standing at this moment, but creation of 20 million low interest loan programs. The DCEO will administrate a low interest loan program to qualify social equality applicants to help startup costs associated with entering the licensing business in the cannabis.
No, that's great. It's almost like they're presenting their own form of safe banking, but it's not called safe banking there.
Right, because the applicants with at least 51% ownership and controlled by one or more individuals who have resided for at least 5 of the preceding 10 years are eligible for that.
And what state is this again?
This is Illinois.
Illinois.
Yes.
All right.
This is the
So,
amendment for the bill filed by Senate Bill 7 to legalize recreational adult use, which was back in January 1st of 2020.
and can a man go eat? Can you shed us some light on that? I'd like to get a comment from you. Can you give us some more information on the ground? What's going on in your state?
Right. So while we're waiting to see a little bit from him, I want to touch on real quick the limitations on the ownership. No person or equity shall hold any legal, equitable, or beneficial interest directly or indirectly of more than 3 centers. No person or entity shall hold any legal, equitable, or beneficial interest directly of 10 or more dispensing organizations. No craft grower license shall be issued to any person with more than 10% in a cultivation, and no person or entity shall hold a legal, equitable ownership or beneficial interest directly or indirectly of more than one craft growing license under that article.
Gotcha. All right. So we have a couple of responses here. So he's talking about the government's just not governed by the governor. So I do understand the Senate representatives for the state as well. Do you think the people running the city are privileged? I definitely do. They are in not only a position to where everything's downhill. So that means whatever they call it, whatever way that they see it, that's what it is. We put those people in office. They were considered to be either the leaders, educated enough to lead and keep everyone in a safe space, and also to make decisions right now in the current now, so that way that the city and state can still operate at the level that it needs to. The next question was that was only for people who already got approved though. So the thing about the approval is this: if you met the conditions of the prerequisites that they put out there, you were approved without question. And there is a biasness with that. So I want everyone to understand that's listening that in every in every state there's a level of favoritism. um, Even with the politicians that are there, they may give themselves an advantage that me, you, or Nate may not have, and it's just because they're in a position to actually grant the licensing process. That's something that's actually going on in Vegas right now. To get into that space, if you don't have the political alliances, you're definitely not going to be granted the license. You also got to shell out a significant amount of money that if you're not granted, you forfeit that money as well. So the conditions, there's no favorable conditions for anyone to go in unless you have an advantage in politics. A lot of times it's about who you know, not what you know, but who you know.
Well,
So
and that was the thing I was going to say, on exactly what Candyman's saying here. For example, licensing cost for early approval adult use license, cultivation organizations, non-refundable permit fee of 100,000. So that doesn't mean, I mean that's gone whether you get it or not. Cannabis Business Development Fund, 5% of your total sales between July 1st, 2018 and July 1st, 2019, or 500,000, whichever is less. For your dispensing organizations, license number one, non-refundable 30,000. Cannabis sales 3% of your total sales or 100,000, which is less. License two is also again a non-refundable $30,000 permit fee. The Cannabis Business Development Fund would be 200,000.
yeah,
So there's your cost accrued inside of there. And one, some of these people aren't going to be able to do it because of equity, as he was stating, and whatnot, not having that business, not having that money. But that's a lot of money, 100,000 to put out with just the hopes of maybe I'll be selected.
totally unfair. I definitely and one of the things he's talking about is privileged, and he broke down the meaning of
Mm-hmm.
privilege from a root word, which I'm putting up here.
Yep.
Privilege comes from the root word privy, which means private, and ledge, which means law. Absolutely. That's all what it is and what it's all about. You have politicians that are in there that are actually taking envelopes from various companies, corporations, and individuals that are leveraging a decision to be made by that person that's in that seat who controls the outcome of how laws and certain procedures will be within that local market or within that state. So definitely, you hit that right on the head.
Yep. So touching on a couple things real quick, and then I'm going to get into what it said about investing in communities that suffered through the war on drugs in Illinois. But for example, real quick, your craft growers under this bill, non-refundable application fee of 5,000, but the licensing fee of 40,000. Same for the processors. Transporting organizations, non-refundable 50,000 application, licensing fee of 10,000, and dispensing organizations also have a non-refundable of 5,000, but licensing fee of 30,000.
Right. And you know what he's saying right here when you talk about the cops itself. Cops right now, um, their mindset is their initial protocols is that was wrong. If the laws, even if the laws are transitionally changing, until they change the SOP for how officers engage people, whether it's in stops or even just in public itself. If you're in Washington State and you smell marijuana smoke out on the street coming out of a shop or anything like that, keep in mind in that state it's 100% legal. So the SOP for the officers there totally different. Same thing for Colorado, whether it's Denver or any other city that's in the state of Colorado. You don't have those problems. The problems actually come in the states to where they haven't fully made it legal, whether to possess it, consume it, um, whether it's a decrim that's in place within that state. So you just got to look at that until those states dictate how things are, and then turn it around in the training or the SOP for the police officers, how they engage the public in regulating that is going to be the same thing. They're going to arrest you. You're going to go through the judicial process of seeing a judge. You're going to end up paying a fine, possibly going to jail at that point. So I definitely understand where your point is when you talk about, um, pot itself, the cannabis laws, drug laws. What we have to do now is we have to continue to push for a decrim state by state. We also have to continue to push to get pardons in place to get people out of jail who have simple possession that has nothing to do with intent to distribute. And then even then, it still goes by the actual amount that you actually possess at that point in time when it comes to the possession. Right now, point oh 0.03, as you put right there, point oh 0.03 or less should not be a problem. But the thing about it is, until the police are equipped with machinery to be able to detect whether or not it's point oh 0.03 or not, it's still a gray area, and they're still going to police it the same way. They'll let a judge decide what happens at that point.
Yep. Now, here's the question that we're going to have that's kind of interesting is this. The proposal would establish a new grant program, the Restoring Our Communities ROC program, to invest in communities that have suffered the most because of discriminatory drug policies. But here's the question I have on some of this. They're going to designate ROC areas or locations where applicants will be eligible to apply for state funding through the board. It'll consist of 22 members chaired by the governor or his designee and the attorney general or their designee. The ROC will develop a grant application for eligible ROC areas to distribute the grants across the state. And the board will deliver an annual report to the governor's office about its progress. But from what I'm seeing there, are you really doing something that's going to help with the equality? Because you're not talking about how you're going to lessen their fees or their applications or anything else. You're just saying that we're going to set forth this guideline to help, but is it really helping?
I think that the tough part of when you put a total circle to encompass what's going on. One, we need research and more data to understand what level do cannabis consumption contribute to crimes, whether it's gun-based crimes, whether it's homicides, robbery, thefts, you name it. So we need more information when it comes to that. I still think it still goes ultimately back to choice. When you put money into programs, which I'm glad you brought this part up, Can a Mango Eat? When you put money into programs, you can either see the good in that program or you can see the bad. So it's which side you're actually putting that money
Right.
toward in the programs. So when you put money toward rehabilitation, then you're giving people an opportunity saying, hey, we're not incarcerating you. We want you to still be a solid, outstanding person, live your life, and reduce the risks in society. But the way how they have it set up now, people who self-medicate, who are just trying to get relief from whatever they're trying to deal with on a daily basis, um, they should be able to make that choice ultimately what they use. But keep in mind, you still have to use safely and also understand how it affects your body.
Right. One thing I did see that was some good news, at least, they are also putting in the process of expungement with this bill. An automatic expungement process requires the following. The Department of State Police must identify all individuals with criminal records that are eligible for expungement and automatically expunge the record for minor violations within 2 years of the effective date of the act. Within 180 days of the effective act, the Department of State Police must notify the prosecutor local law enforcement agencies, and the Illinois Attorney General Office identifying these individuals with minor violations that are eligible for expungement. So, with that, they kind of already tried to start what Biden stated last year.
And that's good because Biden did not clearly make a stand on it. He mentioned it,
Mm-hmm.
but once again, as Commander in Chief, someone who is really good at writing laws that affect people, and we talking about an entire nation. Um, he was more on the fence than he was proactive. So we definitely want to make sure that we do everything that we can to hold him accountable to what he say and what he
Right.
don't do.
Well, and to Can a Man Go Eat here, his next statement there, not full expungement. Correct. Right here, the automatic expungement process does not apply to individuals with misdemeanors or class 4 felony violations that were accompanied by the charges other than the qualifying offense, which that sounds exactly like what Biden stated too.
Yeah. Um, just looking at his comment here. All right, says city. So we'll give a shout out to that. He says they have a right to do what they acknowledge, well, other than they don't have their right to do the same. Acknowledge this is what's being privileged as though. It's an example of being privileged. Everything, the entire process is privileged. And
Yes.
one of the things that we have to continue to do is to leverage a person who has the mindsets that are contrary to the beliefs that we have on this show. We believe that the power of the plant has medicinal powers to help everyone. Um, and there are a number of afflictions that needs the supporting research. We need to have definitely more growers in the space that can contribute product that is licensed and sanctions across from one state to the next. The unfortunate part is when you cross state lines, it's a federal offense when you're transporting these things. So um, talking about over 500 grams of possession. Yeah, 500 grams of possession, you're gonna go away for quite a while, depending on what state it is, for the most part. But when you ask about expungements, the expungements are probably gonna be for the minor
Right.
cannabis possessions, whether you may have had a joint or less than an ounce, 2 ounce, 3 ounce, something of that nature. Anything more than that, um, once again, you start dealing with federal mandates.
Right. And also in that, they talked about employment. Nothing in the proposal prohibits employers from adapting reasonable employment policies concerning smoking, consumption, storage, use of cannabis in the workspace. And nothing prohibits employers from disciplining employees or terminating the employment of an employment for violating employers' employment policies or workplace drug policies.
All right, so what I can say and contribute to that, when you're in industries, or let's say law enforcement, private security, health and medical, those organizations require higher standards
Mm-hmm.
than other industries, and the standards was established by those across the board, and those standards are unfair because let's just say if you had a medical card, but it's a conflict of interest with your job. If you
Right.
walk in there with a medical card and they have a zero drug policy in place, so we still have some laws, city by city, state by state, that needs to have to be revisited. And with that being said, um, you put in here NYPD changing their cannabis stance. Absolutely. A lot of states now, as you have open-minded politicians go into place and they write out the laws, we need more people who are willing to go and go against the grain to say, hey, everything that we've been taught or what has been said about this plant is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to right those wrongs at some point in time, and it's just going to take a little bit more time. I do see a lot of things changing within this year, and also going into the election year. Going into the election year, they got to talk about it. They're going to be forced to be talk about it. They're going to be asked the questions about it, and their responses is what we have to pay attention to.
Right. And like he stated here, NYPD scraps mandatory cannabis use testing for cops. That goes back to the same idea that we spoke of the individual who had the medical card that was a firefighter in New York who didn't use day off the day before, did in small dosage, but yet look at what happened with him. He got released from his post. He ended up suing the city, and now he's back again. But he did everything legally the right way, but he still got hit for it.
Absolutely. And he just shed light on the issue about NYPD issuing a memo on Monday announcing the end of mandatory drug testing for off-duty cannabis use. And once again, in your own personal space, you still have to ask the question: how is this affecting you or altering you from actually effectively doing your job?
Right.
And the thing about it is, as in this world of technology, this world of social media that we're in now, it is more burdens put on people. Worry about social acceptance from people who you don't even know. So a lot of times, even in this, just the daily rigors of life, of what you have to deal with, they have to reassess everything now as we move forward.
Now, to your point that you made a few minutes ago, and a clarification on what Can Mango Eat said, yes, they did do that. However, the department should only drug test a member of service for marijuana if there is reasonable suspicion that the member is impaired on the job.
Absolutely. And that's something that you have to look at for these people who protect and serve, where they're serving the public, they're serving the nation. We don't want anything that would adversely affect their decision to protect the right of others. That's just bottom line what it is. They're there to protect the right of others. And can this plant, where there's the cannabis used with THC, which has mind-altering effects, can it affect you while you're doing your job? Yes, I do.
Yes.
I truly believe that. So you definitely cannot use it while on duty. When you're off duty, it's your personal time. You should have the right to use and consume. It's like no different. I don't want to use alcohol, um, but in consumption of alcohol, you can overly consume alcohol and become intoxicated. Of course, you would not do that on the job, but it's legal in your personal time. So, what's the difference in your personal time when you're off duty with cannabis consumption? It should
Mm-hmm.
be taken off the Schedule 1 list. Period, point blank, bottom line. It's the same effect as alcohol without affecting your liver.
Right. We've seen that alcohol causes multiple issues, like you said, liver, other health concerns, because we've had more research, more study done throughout the decades of it, where we got this plant which is showing benefits, not as many of issues, and we can't get it moved forward.
Absolutely. And I think when we look at it, and he highlights a point here about the NYPD honchos have said they didn't want their officers to go pot. And once again, let's look at the age of those honchos that are making those decisions. Those are probably people that are 25, 30-year career law enforcement. They were trained back in the early 80s, mid 80s, and they still have those same mindsets. They have not adjusted and adapted to. We are now in year 2023. So true and truly indeed, I do understand um, where people's, where their mindsets are at. It's old mindsets. And until we get some new, young, fresh leadership in place that is more open and more aware of what's going on and not closed minded, that's where we're going to stand with it, with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And these people, whether it be firefighters, officers, anybody, doctors, all of these people, they have to understand how this drug works and use it responsibly, just like anybody else, a truck driver, someone, a school teacher, anybody. So it is something that falls back on the individual as well as the state and local municipalities to make sure that we're all hand in hand and doing it properly. but those who are doing it properly also should not be slapped on the wrist.
That's right. That's right. And he put in there that the Attorney General reminds police departments cops can smoke pot. And bottom line, that is you should have that is your right. You
Hmm.
should have that right to do so. The issue is it's still being a Schedule One, and it needs to be taken off that list by the Fed.
Correct. That's where all of this really helps moving forward because they're within their right legally to do such, but there are possibilities of altering effects, regardless, like we said, whether it's working in a convenience store or being a police officer. So there are still those who have to maintain and do things properly themselves and understand and educate themselves as well.
Absolutely. And he actually calls out the Attorney General, Matt Placken. He issued a memo to law enforcement leaders reminding them that New Jersey law allows cops to light up when they're off duty. So can off-duty New Jersey cops smoke weed now that that it's legal? It's police. All right. So once again, I'll give you an example of a policy that I've had in place. Um, you cannot consume alcohol within 8 hours of your shift because what I want to make sure that occurs is that there is nothing that would be mind altering in your body during the time that you're in a professional capacity. So um, let's just talk about the law itself. Is it legal to possess cannabis in New Jersey? Is it legal um, to use it in a recreational format other than medical? These are the questions that we have to answer regarding New Jersey. If it is legal to consume in a recreational capacity, then officers in an off-duty capacity should be able to use cannabis in an off-duty capacity. If the law does not support that, then no, they cannot use. And that's if that comes to that question, that's my answer.
Right, because there are multiple articles online where he talks about, you know, what is stated on police being able to use it, both New York, New Jersey, all of those. So that's stuff that you can go online. But, you know, he comes forth and saying that he is here to serve the public as the attorney general. And yes, I know he's not the only one that can come forth and make these things happen. But the question is, he says he's serving it. Is he doing everything within his power to make sure that he is serving them properly? I can't say that he is or isn't. I'm just throwing it out as a question mark.
And you know the other gray area that goes with this here, it still goes to popular belief. And the popular belief is that there was always a high standard on police and law enforcement. So let's just go back to police officer with tattoos. Two,
Right.
3 decades ago, officers weren't supposed to have tattoos. 2, 3 decades later, guess what? They have more than enough tattoos on officers,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're up to their neck, on their hands, all over the place. Does that mean that they cannot professionally police? No, that doesn't mean
Right.
that. But that was a high standard that was in place, and that standard has been reevaluated as there are shortages on good professional police officers across the country.
And remember, too, facial hair was not allowed for a long time in that business, just like as a firefighter. Has to be
Absolutely.
clean and tight to the precipice of the lips. So this, just like yourself, would not have been allowed.
No, not at all. And you know, as they relax the standards, whether it's piercings, tattoos, facial hair, even now, with the challenge of getting enough officers and having enough officers to serve the public trust, they're also relaxing certain infractions. You
Mm-hmm.
have officers that have been hired with DUIs, um, you know,
Domestic abuse issues.
yeah, domestic abuse issues, yeah. So there are some trivial circumstances that are surrounding police today, you know, with a licensing, certification, training. Those are challenges. And until we have something across the board standard for all states, it's going to vary. The mindset's going to vary. The outlook's going to vary. But in an off-duty capacity, if that state allows recreational, they should be able to use it, and it should not be punished for it.
Absolutely. Now, absolutely 100% appreciate all of this that, you know, Candyman Goedes brought to us today, helping us move this forward and discuss the topic that, we've briefed on, but not highly on. But a couple of things that we wanted to mention too was we wanted to go over a couple of predictions that have been put out there possibly for the cannabis industry this year. For example, they're anticipating hundreds of new dispensaries will open across dozens of new cities with delivery service to spread. We've already seen that Toronto, Canada, multiple cities are doing delivery services. That would be great for shut ins, for the medical, especially. But again, it's not our job to enforce that. But yes, there are some people who might do it medically that's not the reasoning, but that's on them, not on us. But I think this delivery is a great thing for these individuals.
It absolutely is. And I want to look at one of the topics that he talked about here, about Vancouver, Ottawa, Regina, Montreal, will allow their officers to use recreationally as Calgary introduced a zero consumption policy. And Calgary, if I'm not mistaken, has a large number of schools. Um, it's more like a Calgary to me is like a huge college town to
Right.
me. So I can see why that city chose to go with a zero consumption policy. But then, of course, there are schools in Montreal, um, there are schools in Vancouver, um, Ottawa, Regina, I think are smaller provinces. I have never been to those, but I have been to Vancouver, Montreal, and Calgary, and I can pretty much assure you that Calgary is more like like a UGA. It's a large college city. They got a pretty large school there. I can't remember the school, but they do have a very large school there. So I definitely understand that point when you go there. I think what happens is that once again it still goes back to the leadership and how they view everything. And you can obviously see in Calgary, the leadership varies from the leadership in Vancouver, Regina, Ottawa, and and Van, I'm sorry, Montreal.
Yeah, and something else that we're looking at is I love this prediction, and I hope this is true across the nation, but honestly, across the world. Will lounges partner with rideshare companies to get patrons safely home after consumption?
I think they should. We do not want people to have those psychoramic properties totally active while they're driving because I feel that there's some form of hallucination that's there that will contribute to reckless driving. So we definitely want people to be in a safe space. Same way with alcohol, you
Yes,
got taxis and ride shares available outside of a club. And you have a lot of people that are responsible enough to take those public transportations, whether it's a taxi or go ahead and order your Uber or Lyft or a ride share to safely get home and keep the public safe and the people who are traveling safe.
absolutely. Because something else with the whole rescheduling possibility. Will cannabinoid science advance, showing new discoveries around the medical efforts or the lack thereof? And I think that's a fair point because the more we do research on it, we're going to find the positives. We're also going to see some of the negatives because we're researching it.
Yeah, we definitely are. Um, I want to highlight a question about do you require at least a pre-employment drug screening? Police officers can be drug tested after driving or shooting incident on duty or randomly. Can police officers and firefighters use? So to answer this about pre-employment, in the um, prior years or the prior decades, pre-employment screening was a mandatory requirement across the board. As the laws are being adjusted and changed, city and state at a time, it goes by the law of the land, and I got to emphasize law of the land. Whatever the land says, wherever you go, wherever you travel, whether you drive through it or whether you live there, you have to know the law of the land.
Mhm.
Ignorance of the law is not bliss. It is a fine. It's imprisonment. It's a loss, possibly a loss of freedom and financials. So, what I got to say about that when it comes to pre-employment, um, because certain cities have changed their policies, they may not require it in a pre-employment screening, but what they may do is they may ask them the question, do you use? And they may give them a protocol or some form of orientation or some type of training or directive letting them know what they can and cannot do on and off duty, and those officers have to pretty much follow that. Now, do those laws infringe on their rights, or do those rules infringe on their rights? It's possibly that it does. But it's important when, again, example, somebody is DUI or driving under the influence, and they have an accident. Automatically, um, the testing of them afterward to know what their blood alcohol content is important. So that's the same thing when you're dealing with officers. If they have an incident while they're driving or an incident where they have discharged their firearm, um, there is a testing to eliminate the possibilities of wrongdoing, or there is testing to validate any form of wrongdoing. So the testing is important, and testing should be required. Bottom line, period. Bottom line, point blank.
No, for sure. But think even, it goes beyond law enforcement. It's, yes, it's, I think, highly important when it comes to those type of people, law enforcement and whatnot. But if you have a workers' comp case, you're going to be tested for the possibility of alcohol or drugs doing a workers' comp case. That's even if you're in a restaurant business or any other field, honestly. So it's not just them who will be drug tested after an incident.
That, and then also, if you're prescribed any opioids,
Mm-hmm.
um, they're not going to let you combine cannabis consumption with opioid consumption.
Right.
So you're still going to have to go through a screening with that. So even if you are a pain management case or someone who has been injured, whether in an accident, a fall, anything that may be work related or accident related, you're still going to be asked that question regarding cannabis consumption. Because cannabis cannot be prescribed right now, doctors are not willing to allow you to use cannabis with a prescribed opioid or prescribed prescription that they have. So that's something to also look at as well.
Absolutely. And something else that they're predicting this year too is that states are going to crack down on designer cannabinoids like Delta 8, THC, hemp derived D9, THCO, and HHC, etc., which we've got to get these designers off and have them regulated so that it's proper for all consumption.
Yes, and I think what has to happen is one day, one state at a time. These states will create the normalcy that we're looking for. Some will be longer than others, but I think what just has to happen right now is continue the conversation and keep talking about it, so that way it does go that way. We all know standard across the board, zero point zero 0.03 is the legal standard set by the Fed when it comes to what is considered THC or what's considered cannabis. I mean, not cannabis. I'm sorry, CBD.
Yep. I think more celebrities will launch brands this coming year. We've seen Snoop and some others do that. More parties like Versailles, New York, one will change equality programs in court. And I think these big businesses getting behind to help the equality is going to be a huge push and a huge plus for this industry in this year.
I truly think with the challenges of opportunity, being there from one city to the next, this increases the opportunity if they open this industry up. Taking it off the Schedule One list definitely will help a number of industries from the research information that's needed. Those are opportunities. As far as work-related opportunities, those are also educational opportunities as well. And all the research to industrialize it, to put it in a medical format as well. those are still bona fide opportunities. And then also to take it to the retail space, those are still bona fide opportunities. You still got the even in the growing aspect of it, still bona fide opportunities. So we have to totally open this industry up and take it to the next level.
Absolutely. And the last couple of things we wanted to touch on is what the prediction is in terms of political. 2023, they're saying we'll see no cannabis legalization bill pass Congress. Republicans take over the control of the House, which means Republican committee chairs have the power to block any cannabis reform bills. And they don't, like, even if the bills has enough to pass the floor votes to pass. But they're also saying that Congress will pass small incremental cannabis bills, but not the Safe Banking Act. And furthermore, the U.S. Senate Democrats will still control the agenda, and they still won't have enough votes to pass legalization bill. Now, again, like we said, these are all predictions. This is not you and I. This is what I see online talking about the potential of what they see this coming year. And I mean, it could go that way. Hopefully it won't, but it could. It could go on either side of the aisle.
Now, let me actually, I just want to be clear on this here. The Republicans didn't take over the House because Herschel Walker lost,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
So the Democrats have control of the House,
Right.
and most of the Democrats favor a form of safe banking, and then also fair impartiality for cannabis laws.
Right. So see right there, we're already seeing that the prediction is not exactly where the prediction lies.
What has to
But
happen now is, and I guess one key point that he's saying here is that give it to everyone who is disproportionately affected, regardless of race.
absolutely.
Um, anyone at any point in time can go to jail for cannabis possession by the wrong police officer. Officer who may not have been educated on the updating law and just the changes itself. You have some officers that will subject people to a criminal process and let their attorney or let the judges figure it out. They themselves will just say, "Hey, I'm just doing my job. This is the law," which even then they still infringe on people's rights from one day to the next. So I definitely understand that. I think that when we talk about in 2023, we will see no cannabis legalization bill pass in Congress. That is definitely um, alarming to just see that statement alone. But let's just hope that with us having a Democratic House and a chance to continue to push and talk about this here, that eventually we'll get safe banking in place once we have the majority of the states online. I think that same majority rule will be the way to get us to where we need to be at, is majority rule. Um, and that's why we'll see a change in Congress at that point in time. Will it come off of the Schedule One list? I would hope that it would be put on the table by the next commander in chief if we get a new one elected in 2024, and then even then, the process. I hope that it doesn't take 4 years from that point. So we still have a challenge of possibly 2027 of it being taken off of the list. But I hope it's done within that time.
Absolutely. And real fast, we're going to close out here in just a moment. But like what we put on our Facebook page the other day, just because, for example, here in Georgia, we put all this up showing where people were lying and standing. Yes, the Democrats as a whole were more favoritive than Republicans. But if you broke down that list, not all the Republicans were 100% against it, and not all the Democrats were 100% for it either when it came to terms of federal legalization, state, medicinal, banking, all that stuff. They're all on different levels. So please educate yourself, study that. Don't sit here and just say one party is yes, one party is no. It's a little bit more gray than that. And honestly, it should be more gray than that. It should be bipartisan. It shouldn't be us, them, yes, no.
Right. Definitely agree with that.
And that
And
goes to more than just this industry. That's across the board. We need to work together in the House and Senate, bipartisan wise, not my party, your party.
absolutely. And can a mango eat? Um, we'll make this last statement because we're getting ready to close out. It did end the race neutral, social equity, social justice orientated way that got bipartisan support. Um, that is where we need to stand on a
Yes.
bipartisan standpoint, and work on a neutral social equity. That means that an opportunity for everyone, not for just black or white or Latino, red or brown. What we have to do is we have to make it equal for everyone, so that way it's a bona fide opportunity for everyone, and that's what I truly believe in that. Um, so, with that being said, we are at the top of the hour. I definitely thank Canamango E for coming in and
Yes.
and stirring up the conversation. We definitely appreciate you coming on. We definitely appreciate you coming. So we want you to join us next week as we talk and have discussions next week regarding various cannabis news and where we're at from one state to the next. Definitely follow me, Big Boy Sam, on IG. Check me out, Sammy Murphy, on LinkedIn. Um, as far as following us, Matcha Foundation, definitely follow our posts on Twitter and on Facebook um, for any updates.
Absolutely. We got news that we post on those sites constantly, all day, every day. Hopefully, we'll be able to get our guest back. Not sure what happened there, but love to schedule another time with him because we'd love to hear about his input on the cannabis industry. For me, myself, you can reach out to me at DJNQ75, both on Twitter and Instagram. And real quick, I know we've come out of the holiday season, but let's still look out for each other. Check on individuals who are having issues, who don't seem to be themselves in whatever ways, because people are going through stuff. Even if they look like they have a smile on their face, sometimes those people are hurting the most. So I challenge
Yes,
this week, everybody reach out to at least one person.
absolutely. Much love to everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Canamango, big shout out. Canamango East, big shout
Yes,
out
thank
to
you.
you as well. And definitely thank you again. Happy New Year to everybody. Let's keep going.
Be safe, and we will see you next Wednesday.
All right.